Hello nerd fighters in Charlotte. I'm going to talk through my books really quick because then I have a lot more to talk about. Harry Potter 5, The Order of the Phoenix. Good book. It takes a little bit to get into. Probably not my favorite of the books, and I'll explain a little bit later why, because it has to kind of do with Harry's struggle, and I'll talk about that later in the video. If you haven't seen the cover, this is what the front looks like. This is what the back looks like. Next is Harry Potter 6, Half-Blood Prince. If you haven't seen the cover, this is what it looks like with Harry and Dumbledore on the back, and then you have the Death Eater symbol and the rest of the order there. Fantastic book. I loved it. I cried. I laughed. I did the whole 9 yards, everything. I think at one point when I found out what happened in later chapters about Dumbledore, I cried and I stopped reading the book for a little bit, and it took me about half an hour to recompose myself, and then I got back into the book and started reading again, and I finished it. Then, of course, the 7th book. The 7th book is definitely, again, one of my favorites. I think if I had to label my favorite books, it'd have to be 3, 4, 6, and 7 are my favorites. If I'd label the movies as my favorites, I'd have to say 3, 6, and 7. Both parts of 7. Oh my god. If you haven't seen the cover of the US version, it looks like that, with Voldemort in the back. Fantastic book. So much symbolism, so much amazingness. The end of the war, and just, oh, so cool. I'll talk about this book a whole lot more in just a second. Now, for something I haven't done, I'm going into Professor Kyle mode. So, I got my nerdy glasses, I got my blazer, I'm all set. Harry Potter 5, 6, and 7. Very, very good books, very good, important parts of literature. Now, you might be wondering why this is. I'll tell you why. Because of something called literary alchemy. Yes, it sounds a little weird, and yes, it sounds kind of Harry Potterish in itself, but it's true. At least I think it is. So literary alchemy, there's 3 major parts. There is the breaking down of the self, there's the rebuilding of the self, and there's the purification of the self. This all has to do with alchemy, because in alchemy what you really do is you take a material, you break it down to its minor parts, you rebuild it up into something else, and you purify it until it's the best thing you can get. Most of all, alchemists tried to turn lead into gold. This also equates to literature in the sense of the breaking down of the self, the rebuilding of the self, and the purifying of the self. And this happens to Harry in 3 books. Can you guess which books? If you guessed 5, 6, and 7, you're right! Starting off with 5. 5 is what we call the Black Book. And it's called the Black Book for several reasons. This is the kind of teen angsty Harry that we don't really like all that much. And who dies in this book? Sirius Black. And so Black is symbolized by that, and Sirius Black is a huge part of this book. This is the breaking down of Harry. This really brings him to his lowest moment, which is obviously the end of the book when Sirius dies, and he is as low as he can get. And this leads to the 6th book. The 6th book is what we call the building up book, or the white book. So we go from black to white. And it's symbolized mostly by Dumbledore. I mean, he's like a white wizard. He really is. Albus, I actually think, means white. Like albus is a Latin word for white. It's the rebuilding up of Harry as he learns about Voldemort's Horcruxes, and he starts to become more and more of the person he needs to be to end up resulting in his fate, which happens in the 7th book, which I'll talk about. The 7th book, you can even see in the cover tiles, this is the red book. Red book being the purification. So this is where literary alchemy ends. The purification of the self. And the purification of the self with Harry is his journey to figure out that he needs to follow the Horcruxes and not the Hallows. He becomes so selfless in his purification that he dies for what he believes in. That's my book talk for today. If you guys watch my other channel, Augie Basebone, I'll leave a link right here, in this little box right here. DFTBA. And as John Green says, only this is business.